right. Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Uh, we're live here on WYSL today, so give us a call at 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. If you'd like to join the show, shout down the line to our friends listening over at WACK out in Newark, New York. And, of course, all of our friends listening online. Hopefully you guys are getting a working signal from me online. My computer's been a bit slow this morning. But all our friends listening over on the Free Solution Facebook page, Free Solution YouTube channel, and the Kevin Wilson pages as well. So thank you so much, wherever you're listening today. Appreciate y'all being here. Of course, got several different things to talk about today. I know that the news cycle's dominated by the Russia-Ukraine stuff. I'll get to some of that a little bit later in the show, but there's a topic I've been itching to talk about for a while. I've been so busy, I haven't been able to do, the live show on this in a couple weeks. So I did want to get to a news item that was a big deal, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. Again, the Russia-Ukraine stuff kind of dominating the news cycle, understandably, right now. But I wanted to talk about updates to the CDC milestone guideline for kids and whether or not that was related to masking. Also want to talk about the masking mandate getting repealed, although not until Wednesday in New York State. So we'll talk about that too. And of course, again, we're going to talk about some of the Russia-Ukraine stuff in a little bit, maybe second half of the show. We'll see if we get to it. But let's talk about the CDC updates for now, though, to the milestone guidelines. So you may have seen some news about this. I've seen people kind of share images and graphics about it, a few articles where basically the accusation is that the CDC changed the speech milestones for young children based on increased developmental delays that could be caused by masks, right? Which is an understandable thing to want to look into, right? We've been telling kids ages 2 and up to mask. Even all the caregivers and daycares are masked too. So even for the kids younger than 2 years old, how is that impacting speech development, where they can't connect the mouth movements and the looks, the full facial expressions to speech and what it means, right? And so does that have a longer term impact on childhood speech development, particularly for kids, of that very young age, those formative years? And this is something that's personal to me, right? Like my kid just turned 1, right? I'm looking at these milestones all the time. I want to see, okay, you try not to, right? Like you try to just like enjoy the moment, make sure you're kind of just soaking in the awesomeness of seeing a child like learn and grow. It's a wonderful thing. Fatherhood's a beautiful thing. And but you look at these milestones and you try to say, okay, well, is my kid doing this yet? Is my kid doing this yet? Are they supposed to be sitting by this point? Supposed to be rolling over by this point? Supposed to be standing, doing pull to stand by this point? So if he's not doing that, what does that mean for me? And so again, this is my day-to-day life. Like, we're thinking about like these types of things and where my kid's at. And so when I looked at the milestone update, I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Is this something that they're changing the data because of the current conditions, or are they changing it because of something else? And I think the reason for changing that is actually pretty reasonable. So give me a second to explain it, because I know some folks are going to be like, oh, the government doing something reasonable. This is something I think that CDC should appropriately do, is provide guidance on stuff and stay out of the ham-fisted mandates that they've been doing this year, getting involved in rent control and getting involved in, not that they should be uninvolved with COVID policy, but creating policies that maybe impact the economy, and they should be advisors to folks, provide information for people to be able to act on, people and their doctors, right? So what these updates actually did is the way they were set up before is that they would be set up so that the milestones they listed would be based on the median kid. So, like roughly 50th percentile. So half of kids, the average kid would reach this milestone by this age. Okay, so by whatever, 3 months, they should be smiling. By 6 months, they should be, rolling over. By 8 months, they should be sitting up, whatever, right? Like, so half kids would do that. And then, 1 years old, what at 12 months, what should they be doing? And they would list out some stuff. But the problem is that that guidance wasn't actually useful for being able to tell parents and pediatricians whether or not a child had an actual developmental delay, right? Which is what these guidelines are supposed to be for. They're supposed to tell you whether or not early intervention was appropriate. And in doing that, but what ends up happening though is like, okay, you look at these things like, oh my goodness, my kid isn't meeting these milestones. You talk to your pediatrician, and a lot of times the pediatrician would just be like, yeah, we'll keep an eye on that, but really I don't worry about it until this point in time, a few months later. And that doesn't mean you're wrong. I don't know what Tim's saying. Doesn't mean you're wrong at this point, though. I don't know which point you mean, Tim. So you're gonna have to clarify there. Um, and with with these milestone updates, uh, what it does is it kind of moves it up to the 75th percentile, right? So instead of, all right, like the average kid, the median kid is going to have done this thing by this time. It's 75% of kids by, whatever milestone this is, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, whatever. Uh, they 75% of kids should have hit that. So, right, like the speech milestone at 12 months is they should be saying, mama, dada, or some sort of other, caregiver word. That's stuff I'm looking at. They should be able to wave goodbye at 16 months. They should be able to say, now this in the new guidelines, they should be able to say two words besides mama or dada. And, they should be saying things like ball or dog or whatever. So 75% of kids. So that 25%, if your kid hasn't reached that milestone, that might mean is more likely that there could be an actual developmental delay or some reason for early intervention to have your child go see a specialist and get some help to make sure that they are able to communicate or they're able to move, go see like early intervention physical therapists, because it's not just speech stuff that got updated, it's kind of everything. um and so this actually strikes me as pretty reasonable. It's, something that can help alleviate strains on the early intervention system where a lot of kids aren't able to get those services right away. A lot of it is dependent on government bureaucracy getting access to those, or just the limits of the available specialists in the area. And instead of sending parents into a panic with, oh my goodness, my kid hasn't reached these milestones that the CDC says they should have reached. It's not really like what it did. Again, it tells you the average. This isn't what it does. Instead, it just tells you, okay, now it tells you like, okay, if they haven't reached this milestone by this point, it's more useful to say, maybe you should start talking to your pediatrician about early intervention. And I know it's interesting seeing like the progressive folks have actually been kind of pointing this out as like, oh my goodness, this is a way to take away services from kids. I'm like, no, it's, again, if your kid hadn't reached the milestones in the old CDC layout, like by, that exact date, they're still pretty well within the average. They could still do it within a couple months, whatever the milestone was, and still be well within the average. Just because they're not in the top 50% doesn't mean that they are, going to have an actual developmental delay that's requires a specialist to correct. It might just mean they do it a few months later. Kids all develop at different times, and that's not a big deal. And we should allow some growth for that. It's just at a certain time, if they're not speaking by, a couple years old, then it becomes a bigger deal. And you want to do something to do this. And again, this is something I pay attention to a lot because, my kid is in a category for a certain health condition where he's in the first percentile on something. So developmental milestones that can be impacted by his health condition, and I need to be on it. I need to pay attention to this stuff to make sure that health condition isn't affecting his development. And that's the conversation that should be going on between parents and pediatricians. It shouldn't be a top-down mandate ever from, the state, the CDC, whoever. But if the CDC is able to collect the opinions of experts and disseminate that information to the public for us and our doctors to be able to act on, that's the best. That's what they ought to be doing, assuming the CDC should exist at all. And my libertarian friends could say, well, can a private organization do that? Of course they can. And again, I didn't immediately like look at the CDC. Okay, that's what it is. I look to other experts that I trust. Emily Oster. There's a Motherstone. Milestones of Motherhood that, my wife and I look at too. So all these other experts that are out there who are talking about this stuff, helping us make sense of these changes so that we know how this information applies to our actual lives. And again, that's how things should be done for not just this, but for other things like COVID policy as well. Okay, here's the information you need. We're going to be truthful about this. We're going to explain what it actually means. And then you can go and take that information and see how that applies to your risk assessment, your interactions with your doctors, your, day-to-day life. We can do that with COVID policy, just like we can do it with everything else. And yeah, so that's really my thing on that. Again, we're live here on WYSL today, so if you want to participate in this call, if you think I'm totally wrong about the CDC stuff, that we do need to be concerned, we'd love to hear from you. Give us a call, 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. Or, of course, we are streaming online, I think. I don't know. I'm so glitchy in my online version. I have no idea if I'm actually streaming or not, other than the fact that, Tim and I see Steven has commented. So, I don't know. You guys tell me. I'll see your comments when they come in. I might not put them up, but I see them. Thanks again for joining us. And I know we're going to be heading to a break soon. I don't know. I can't hear any of the music. I have no idea when we're heading to break. All right. Thanks again for joining us on Free Solution. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at Simple Tech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, Simple Tech Innovations should be your first call. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
Oh, those injury attorney ads.
Hurt on your couch? Call 555-OUCH.
It's kind of cute watching that injury attorney buying breakfast for a crash test dummy, but while fun is fun, there's nothing amusing about getting your life back together after a personal injury or a motorcycle accident, or when you need defense for a DWI charge. Christopher Johnson takes your case seriously, and you'll feel like you're his only client because when you meet with him, your case gets 100% of his attention. So instead of cute singing jingles and magic phone numbers,
fall out of a tree? Call 33333.
Write this number down and keep it with you. 585-415-3803. 415-3803. After all, Christopher Johnson knows you're no dummy. Get individual attention and integrity, experience, and expertise. Put the power of one on your legal team. 415-3803. Stay safe, be healthy, drive sober. Christopher Johnson Attorney, personal injury, car or motorcycle accidents, DWI defense.
As a veteran of the United States military, I can finally get the opportunity to enjoy special events, things that we couldn't afford, thanks to VetTix. Every empty seat at a concert, a game, or a play is a missed opportunity to say thanks to a veteran and service member. We can give our veterans a special event where they too can create their own cherished memories. Visit vettix.org. Find out how you can make a difference in a veteran's life.
Only available in the WYSL store at WYSL1040.com, the official Mount Worstmore line of merchandise. Top quality tees, hoodies, and coffee mugs depicting Mount Rushmore style are for worst presidents. Of course, you know who's front and center up on that mountain, and we think you'll recognize the other three. Mount Worstmore items make perfect gifts. They're a great way for you to make a personal statement. Mount Worstmore, locally produced and sold only in the WYSL store at WYSL1040.com.
A free solution.
Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, we're here on WYSL live until 1 p.m. Give us a call, 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. And Yeah, if you have anything on your mind, again, about the CDC stuff, about the with the child care milestone stuff, give us a call on that stuff, or anything else that's on your mind. We're going to talk about the mask mandate ending in school, though, because well, that's something we've been talking about for goodness months here, right? What, does this still make sense? Should this be coming from the state level? That sort of thing. And it's finally over. What's interesting about the mask mandate ending, though, is like, okay, again, one, why is it ending Wednesday as opposed to today? Two, the question is like, well, what specific data points drove Governor Hochul and her health commissioners and whatnot to make this decision? And again, what information, and not just like what information like stop this mandate too, but like, do they have a set of criteria that would make them bring that mask mandate back? It's a fair question, because I don't think that's ever off the table again. Like, we've already set this up. People have accepted, maybe not these listeners, but maybe most people have accepted that their masks can be appropriate in certain situations, right? Tim O'Connor says, what made her change her mind? He says, popularity polls? Question mark. I honestly, yeah, probably like that might be part of it, is that popularity polls have, you know, gotten her to change her mind on this stuff. And with along with a lot of Democrats, like, it seemed like it all kind of went away at once. And I don't know exactly of that, but other than perhaps they saw it as an election liability to continue with COVID policies that were becoming increasingly unpopular, and that they probably still wouldn't lose their base, who see masks as, a way to virtue signal their support of taking the pandemic seriously. And it's wild, again, I've seen these articles saying, like, basically that's the reason for keeping masks around, to show everyone that we're still serious about the pandemic, and then that they therefore should exercise caution, and that people around you should exercise caution because there's still a disease going around. But correctly, the governor's pointed out that there's been a huge drop in cases. Something she said, like 90%, something like that. Depends on the area, but it's been a huge drop in cases. Oh, the pattern of Omicron ended up following some of the other countries that saw outbreaks before we did, whereas a big spike up and then a quick fall down, and we kind of get back to a situation where disease is manageable. So I don't think the masking thing is totally over yet. Like, it's ending in schools Wednesday. The governor, I think, has correctly said, well, now if individual districts want to do this, they can go ahead and do it. I think that should have always been the case, right? If an individual district wants to have that preference, well, okay, we can find out in the district, and it can matter, like, maybe there is an outbreak in that area and they want to have that discussion. Okay, then we can go to school board meetings and talk about it, and the actual local decision makers are there to talk through the pros and cons, hopefully in a reasonable way, of having masking in schools, and what the drawbacks are, and what the benefits are of that. And whether or not you want to be more strict too. Do you want to have only N95 masks? And the other thing that I think is hopefully a continued positive trend, I like the masking optional thing is good. I don't like when some folks are like, oh, well, we should ban masking in school now. Again, this came up last year. We should ban masks. I don't think that's right either, right? Like, again, if you have a kid who or you yourself are, immunocompromised, or you have some other condition that you feel makes you or your child more vulnerable to disease, then I think it's totally fair for you to wear a good fitted N95 mask. And again, there's some great resources. I'll share some links after this on this stuff. Because again, one of the folks that I like reading about this is like Emily Oster, who I've tried to get on this show, but I've never been able to get her on. Just a statistician who's been writing in a really informed way about these issues. But it talks about, like, if your child is wearing a well-fitted N95 mask, it does a pretty good job of protecting them. If again, it's a well-fitted, good quality mask, and especially when you factor in other things like lower transmission rates in your community, um, the other kids not wearing masks doesn't necessarily mean your kid is in significantly more danger. If they have a condition in which they're still worried about COVID, doesn't mean they're in significantly more danger than they were before. But again, this is a matter of, well, how do we make sure that parents are informed about those risks and choices going into these situations? And we're seeing, some reporting come out about how maybe encouraging people to go get any mask, doesn't matter, maybe might not have been the best move. And maybe the putting out information that masking had a significant impact on lowering transmission rates when there wasn't good evidence of doing that isn't the best thing to do. That can create situations where people make decisions based on that information and take greater risks than they otherwise might have in terms of going out or interacting with folks when they were vulnerable because they thought that the mask provided sufficient protection. I'm mostly talking about cloth masks, but kind of any of these situations, right? And that's the thing that we're going to need to have a bit of a reckoning is a strong word, but yeah, I mean, kind of way of reckoning. Well, like we have to figure out what is the best way to tell people to give them the best information possible, to qualify that information by saying this is an evolving situation. It could change, right? You got to understand that. I've changed my mind on some stuff throughout this pandemic, but how do you trust the public? How do we tell the government that they must trust the public with the right information as much as possible and not be manipulative to send out information that is not true or they don't have confidence in, to try to manipulate the public into accepting uh, a level of lockdown or precautions that aren't necessarily optimal. And that when you have to pull it back, when we have to kind of rediscover that they weren't being truthful about it, that they were trying to get people to comply with a certain action, it erodes trust in that institution. Again, we saw that with the original thing with masks, right? When they started saying, don't wear a mask at all. Doesn't matter. Doesn't help. They might have been closer to true on some of those original ones, right? Like they didn't want people again, so taking up the big supply of medical grade masks. They're worried about that happening, and they're worried about people taking risk, being engaging in riskier behavior than they ought to have with an unknown disease by thinking that masks provide a level of protection that doesn't necessarily exist. And so instead of being forthright about that, they changed the strategy of, okay, first, don't wear any masks. They went with that. And then they went with, okay, now everyone get a mask no matter what. And went with, okay, you need a mask or otherwise you're putting other people in danger in all situations, which you still get some folks wearing them outside. And okay, well, what next? Again, the science evolves on this stuff in the sense that people discover new data and you have to make new decisions based on that data. But as I've said for the last couple of years, not trusting the public, that giving them the most accurate information you have at the time possible is the best way to do things, makes things harder to address in the future. It's harder for public health agencies if they want to do the job that people think they ought to do to be able to address that problem. And we see that with the CDC, with the milestone updates. People don't trust that it's done in good faith anymore. All right, thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. We're going to be back in a few minutes. Give us a call, though, if you want to participate in the discussion, 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. We'll be back in just a few. Talk to you soon.
celebrating 35 years.
WYSL.
AM 1040 Avon Rochester, FM 92.1 Rochester, and FM 95.5 Spencerport.
Here's the latest forecast from the News 10 NBC Weather Center for tonight. We'll see mostly cloudy skies. Again, nothing more than a couple of flurries or a snow shower out there. Temperatures in the teens and rising towards 30 overnight. On your Tuesday, slightly milder, but a gusty breeze. We could be near 40. Could be a rain or snow shower in the afternoon. A little bit colder, a couple of snowflakes at times Wednesday, with temperatures back into the 20s and 30s. I'm Rich Cornelia, WYSL.
Drive with safety and security this winter with a little help from Victor Chevrolet. Shop now for the best selection and savings. Lease a 2022 Chevy Trailblazer LS for just $229 a month for 36 months. Or a 2021 Chevy Equinox LT, just $279 a month for 36 months. If you need a pickup, drive a 2021 Chevy Silverado 1500 for just $369 a month for 36 months. These lease deals include returning lessee rebate. All factory incentives and discounts are applied. Security deposit is waived. 10,000 mile allowance per year. 25 cents each additional mile. Must have lease and household. Tier 1 credit approval required. Lessee responsible for repair and maintenance. Conditions apply. Get details at dealer. Looking for a quality used vehicle? Victor Chevrolet has a selection that can't be beat anywhere in the region. And when it comes to service, trust your vehicle to our service department with savings on tires and batteries. Come see how easy it is to do business with us. Find new roads at Victor Chevrolet. Route 96 in Victor. Visit victorchevrolet.com.
Anticipating the overturn of the 1973 Supreme Court ruling legalizing abortion this summer, California prepares for abortion tourism. Looking to New York as an example, if Roe v. Wade is overturned, a majority of states would outlaw abortion, concentrating all the nation's abortions into a handful of abortion hub states like New York and California. California Governor Gavin Newsom assembled the California Future of Abortion Council to make recommendations to, quote, protect, strengthen, and expand abortion care in California. The council recently released its policy recommendations, which in many ways mimic New York's actions through Governors Cuomo and now Hochul, such as creating a fund to cover abortion and any related travel expenses for out-of-state women, insulating abortionists from any civil or criminal liability from a botched abortion, while promoting private abortion businesses with taxpayer funds and regulating pro-life activity. This RealAbortionNews.com update is sponsored by Compass Care.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at Simple Tech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI,
We're not meant to live life alone. At Brighton Presbyterian Church, we believe we need God and one another every day. Join a caring church family that values loving God His Word, and serving others with humility. We worship together at 9:15 a.m. on Sundays at 1775 East Avenue in Rochester, across from Wegmans. Find out more at brightonpresby.org.
A free solution.
All right, welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for today. Thanks again for joining us. We're live here on WYSL. So give us a call if you want to participate in the discussion. 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. And still getting a bit of echo, Bob. Want to get to a comment, though. Blake says, no mandates, never mass children, no scientific evidence, freedom and liberty first. Yeah, listen, Blake, it's probably gonna happen again, right? Like, so the best that we can do is, again, make sure that New York State is allowing either individuals or at least school districts to make these decisions, so we can hold those local folks accountable and to at least like give some evidence. Okay, like what's your threshold, right? Like, are you making this mandate arbitrarily? Like, is there any evidence to suggest that like this is something that makes sense and this works in the moment, right? I don't feel like that's a lot to ask for. I feel like that's a pretty reasonable thing to ask for, is to at least set a threshold for that, right? And again, if you're going to set a mandate at all, and I don't think it should be a mandate, if you're going to set that at all, though, well, you better back it up with something substantial. It's got to actually work. It's got to actually make a difference. It's got to actually keep kids safer. And right now, again, Democrats too are starting to come out with, no, it's not worth the trade-off anymore. Okay, something changed. What is it? And again, a lot of voters, no offense to folks listening to this station, you guys are great, but a lot of voters are fickle. It's what it is. A lot of them won't remember who said what on which issue by the time November comes around, if the condition that created the frustration has gone away at that point. Again, not you folks listening to this show. You guys are smart. You're wonderful. Love you guys. But there's a lot of voters who are like, oh, yeah, mask mandates, whatever. It's not an issue for me anymore. I'm worried about my gas being $12 a gallon. My goodness, I hope I'm not exaggerating about that. But speaking of which, we'll talk about some of the Russia-Ukraine stuff. I mean, just a ton of stuff happening over the weekend. Interesting stuff, terrible stuff. The war not quite going the way that the Russian government and Vladimir Putin expected. Last I talked about it was Thursday night when I pre-recorded the show with Tim. We're just kind of still coming to grips with like what was happening, in terms of the invasion. They thought the country might collapse by now, and it might still. The Ukrainians are putting up a lot of resistance. You're getting some interesting stories about there. I get the feeling that Tim and I are going to have a lot to talk about for Fake News Friday, because, man, there's so much news coming out of this. So many memes, so many like pieces of propaganda and or marketing, depending on how you want to spin it, coming out of this situation. It's hard to sort truth from fiction. What are the real malicious lies versus what is just capturing a good story? Like there's the Ghost of Kiev story that went around that may or may not be true. There's a Snake Island thing, which a bunch of folks are like, oh, that's totally not true. That was fake news. But when people say that, what they actually mean is that the soldiers who were stationed on the island likely didn't die. It looks like they may have been captured. Okay, so is it still a good story? And if you're familiar with that, I can't say what those Ukrainians said to the Russian ships that were trying to take that island on the radio, but it did make for an interesting story. The sunflower seeds thing, and again, as a marketer and as someone who like watches for what goes on in government, I keep a close eye on this stuff because it's fascinating. And again, I suspect that Tim and I will probably talk about this more on Friday, but I do want to talk about, like just the interesting narrative that's coming out of, weirdly, like both the kind of far left and the far right out of this conflict wouldn't have happened if America had not pushed NATO so far, right? Like that, like there's this this narrative that's come out that said like, well, we caused this, we as in the United States government caused this because the United States government was pushing to expand NATO westward. Well, here's the thing about that. Ukraine is not always going to do what the US wants. We do not control them. We have never controlled them. They are a bunch of individuals with different issues, problems, priorities, like the even trying to blame the US for overthrowing the government in 2014 kind of ignores the agency that the Ukrainian people have, that they had their own reasons for being dissatisfied with the government at the time that are separate from US interests. Even if US interests, like they wanted to have an influence, I think that there's a hubris that exists among US foreign policy professionals about the level of influence that they have over these situations that is far less than they would like to think. They think they can pull the levers and control things, and they really can't. And I think there's a lot of libertarians and ANCAPs who think that they can control everything, and really individuals are kind of going to do what they want depending on what their needs and priorities are. And so when it comes to joining NATO, the US can't necessarily control whether or not they want to apply. We can only have some influence over whether or not they actually get in. And as far as US foreign policy goes, they did not, in fact, get into NATO. But it's understandable that the Ukrainian people, being led by someone who isn't a Russian puppet, may want to join a defensive alliance to protect them from Russia, because Russia took Crimea in 2014. And I don't buy the Russian propaganda saying that, oh, this was like a spontaneous movement and we had nothing to do with that. Same with the two breakaway republics that we talked about too. No, it's nonsense to think that like this was totally organic and they wanted to join Russia. The polls that they did in those regions said otherwise, and the voting that they did was overseen by armed Russian separatists. So it's kind of hard to trust that the whatever 94% who said they want to break off in these areas were not acting under duress, and that was a legitimate referendum to do so. And kind of my point with all this is a couple things. Like so one, that the US doesn't necessarily control or deserve the blame for everything going on abroad. And importantly, Russia has their own agency and Ukraine has their own agency in this situation. Ukraine has their own needs, desires, wants, worries based on the last 10 years of their relationship with Russia. The United States may want to influence stuff, but they don't always control that. And then Russia could have chosen to try to build good relationships with Ukraine by making their own concessions and striving for peace. And instead, they took an incredibly aggressive stance over the last couple years and followed up with a full-scale invasion, create a bunch of pretexts for justifying that invasion, and then acted on it. And now Russian propaganda that they would immediately take that country and that people would just lay down their arms and embrace, their Russian brethren, turned out to not be true. And they're suffering immensely for that. And unfortunately, not just many Ukrainian men, women, children are dying in this conflict, but also Russian young men and presumably women too are dying in this conflict as well, because of a war of choice, because the corrupt Russian government decided to move forward with attacking an independent country. And just because I'm saying that I'm against Russia doesn't mean that Ukraine is perfect. They have their own problems. That is absolutely true. They have their own issues. I don't need Ukraine to be perfect for Russia to still be the Russian government to still be jerks here. They don't have to be perfect. But I can, as someone who is against war in all situations, can still make my opinion known for whatever it's worth. I mean, again, who cares? I'm just some random dude spouting off on the radio. But I can make my opinion known and hope that our political leaders share the opinion that this is a bad thing. And it's weird when political leaders say, well, Russia, had to move at this point in time, and they were acting protect people. No, that is a bunch of nonsense. I don't believe that for a second. I don't trust the warmongers over in Russia any more than I trust the folks over here who are trying to get us into a war and get us involved in entangling alliances. Again, I got my own opinion on NATO. I don't really think that the U.S., should take any role, or at least as active of a role in NATO. But good luck getting us out of that now. Suddenly giving NATO a new reason to exist. Russian government did that. We can still pull back, but I don't believe that their reasons of we had to protect ourselves, we had to stop the ethnic Russians in this area from getting killed, or they wanted this. I don't believe that for a second. Don't believe the war propagandists in Russia. Don't believe the war propagandists in the U.S. because we got our own stuff going on too with unjust wars and Yemen, and still staying involved in other aspects of the Middle East too. Our mess in Afghanistan. We got our own problems. I get that. It's not to ignore the situation here, but I'm not going to like imperialism wherever it's coming from. Thanks again for joining us here on The Free Solution. If you have thoughts on this too, give us a call, 585-346-3000. It's 585-346-3000. When we come back, I'm going to talk about some disturbing domestic trends related to this conflict and how our politicians are responding to it. We'll be back in just a few on A Free Solution.
Why do businesses choose to move their website from Wix and Squarespace to SimpleTech Innovations? Maybe it's their excellent customer service or attention to detail. Maybe it's their ability to give a truly customized solution. Or perhaps they just like the fact that SimpleTech is a local small business that builds great relationships with its clients. Whatever the reason may be, you can rest assured knowing that the local team at SimpleTech has your best interest in mind when building or updating your website. They're hands-on and love helping customers achieve their goals. But don't take my word for it. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. If your website doesn't match your dreams or isn't achieving your goals, give the professionals at SimpleTech Innovations a call today for a consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. SimpleTech Innovations.
Dear Dr. Sussman.
Dear Dr. Sussman, I just wanted to write to all the wonderful people who work with Dr. Sussman and Dr. Pogel at the Center for Cosmetic Dentistry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Each person in the office made me feel my smile.
Not only am I completely happy with my smile, but I feel you've been there for me with all my dentistry.
I've had several dentists in my life, but never a dentist of your caliber. You have state-of-the-art.
You keep current in your field as evidenced by your numerous diplomas and certificates, and your entire staff is really the cream of the crop.
I'm thrilled with the outcome of your skills and artistry. It's made such a difference in my life.
Dr. Sussman, Dr. Pogel, and the entire staff at the Center for Cosmetic Dentistry take great pride in providing not only advanced dental care, but extraordinary cosmetic dentistry. They love what they do and have a partnership with their patients toward long-term dental health.
For a bright, confident, beautiful smile.
Thank you, Dr. Sussman.
Thank you, Dr. Pogel.
Thank you.
Change your life, change your smile.
For more information, call the Center for Cosmetic Dentistry at 22 Smile or visit 22-smile.com.
WYSL. The WYSL store is now open, and your car's crying for an official Voice of Liberty bumper sticker. There's a great selection to help you show your love of God, liberty, and the Constitution. Here are just a few available right now. Shut up, Fauci. Kathy Hokum. No more masking. Open the freaking schools. Scam alert January 6th. No vax mandates. God, please help us. Close the Mexican border. Save America. Stop voting for Democrats. Support the Second Amendment. And your mask doesn't protect squat. But there's more. These are standard weather-resistant bumper stickers guaranteed to get you horn honks and thumbs up in traffic. Choose from other locally made WYSL Voice of Liberty merch too, like tees, hoodies, drinkware, and more. Perfect gifts for any Liberty lover you know. Be sure to check out the exclusive WYSL Mount Worstmore shirts, hoodies, and coffee mugs depicting our 4 worst presidents. Guess who's front and center? Be free. Make a statement. Shop the WYSL store at WYSL1040.com.
A free solution.
All right, welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Willis, your host today. Thanks again for joining us here. Again, if you have any thoughts on this, give us a call, 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. I know some of you are putting comments on there. I have no idea if they're actually getting up because my screen is frozen, although I still see the comments coming in. So I'm assuming that you guys can hear me. So thank you for being here today. We're talking about the Russian-Ukraine stuff in the second half of the show. And I see a comment from Brian. He says, Russia invited Ukraine to talk about the violation of the Minsk scores 27 times before recognizing the independence of the Donbas region declared by those peoples in 2014. Ukraine refused to talk. Again, I don't see those referendums as legitimate, Brian. I look at the news around that stuff, and it was a referendum held under duress, and I don't know how you can look at the situation now and see that Russia wasn't acting with expansionist and nationalist tendencies, and not acting in good faith in trying to address issues in that region. Again, Putin kind of let the mask slip the other day, so to speak, when he started talking about the glory of the USSR and whatnot, and reuniting the Ukrainian and Russian people. It's just a terrifying nationalist fantasy that a lot of Ukrainians clearly don't agree with, and I don't know why so many people who are in the liberty movement make excuses for this sort of aggression. Just because you don't want the US involved doesn't mean that we need to believe the propaganda of a brutal dictator. But let's talk about what is happening, what we can do in the US, and what is a weird, disturbing trend that I've seen. So one of the things I saw was that Representative Eric Swalwell, the same guy who's basically well, the Second Amendment doesn't matter because we have nukes, but kind of mildly threatening to nuke our own people over the Second Amendment. This guy, the total clown Democrat rep from California, said that we should be kicking out Russian students. So this is a type of dangerous nationalism that can pop up around these conflicts, right? We're seeing this, and we're seeing the Russian products thing, which I'm going to get to in a minute. But those Russian students didn't do anything to us. They didn't necessarily do anything to Ukraine either. They are just students. A lot of them are innocent young folks who are coming to America and getting an education. A lot of them may be frustrated with their own government and upset about it and looking for ways to speak out. And, we're seeing many of the Russian people speak out against the government, which is, as we talked about Friday, there are anti-war protests going on in Russia in places like St. Petersburg and other places, with thousands of people risking arrest, detention, long-term, incarceration for speaking out against their government. And yeah, that's an incredibly brave thing. So whenever I talk about me being mad at Russia, to be clear, I always mean the Russian government, the corrupt oligarchs who are driving their country to war, stealing from their own people, and hurting the people of Ukraine. I don't think that the Russian people are any more totally responsible for what happens in their government than you or I might be. There are times, when we might not be happy with what the US government is doing or the New York State government is doing, but that doesn't mean that we are condoning all of their actions because we live in those places, because we live in the United States or we live in New York State. I mean, if you went to another state and they said, "Oh, you're a big Cuomo supporter, your government's or Hochul supporter, and your government's doing all these terrible things, and you must be one of them too." And you're like, "No, I oppose that guy. I try to fight him, or fight him or her." I keep saying Cuomo like he's still governor, even though he's trying to get back in. We're gonna have to talk about that another time. But no, you're not responsible for that. You're not responsible for every bad thing the state does without your approval. The Russian people are the same way. Those Russian students didn't do anything wrong. If you if you get morons who are trying to boycott Russian restaurants or something stupid like that, no, those people are not responsible for that. In fact, many of them may have come over for a reason. Maybe they didn't like the government, either the recent one or the communist one that existed only a few decades ago. Maybe that's why they're here, and they're bringing their craft of making food to us in the United States for us to enjoy. Great. Don't punish those people. It's not their fault. Same thing with some of the vodka brand stuff. I'm seeing some of the I just saw that the governor of New Hampshire is telling the state-owned liquor authority to dump out Russian branded spirits from their thing. This is why I don't like state-owned liquor authorities too, because they can make ridiculous decisions like this. I'm saying the same thing happened in like Virginia and a few other states where they're asking, all the Russian products to be removed from the shelves. The problem is that there's a lot of Russian vodka that isn't actually Russian. Like it isn't produced in Russia. There are state-owned Russian vodka brands. And if this is important to you, you can try to boycott that, sure, but it doesn't really impact that much, but sure. But you see folks who are like pouring out Stoli vodka, which is not in fact made in Russia. I think that one was there's a version of Stoli vodka. There's kind of competing distributors, but there's a version of Stoli vodka that's actually made by a outspoken activist against Putin. Smirnoff is not, in fact, made, although originating in Russia, is not, in fact, owned by the Russian state or anyone associated with that, as far as I'm aware. So pouring Smirnoff down the drain does not, in fact, hurt Vladimir Putin or the Russian government in any way. Russian standards, apparently made by someone in Latvia, which is a NATO country. Just because it has Russian origin doesn't mean it's smart to pour it out. Y'all look silly. Knock it off. If you feel passionately about the situation, and many people do, you're upset with the Russian government, just remember it's not necessarily going to be helpful to punish the innocent people, many of whom may in fact be on the same side as you. And don't let yourself get lost in nationalist nonsense like Representative Eric Swalwell, who's proposing ugly policies like kicking students out of the U.S. just because they happen to be Russian nationals. It's the ugliest thing I've heard in a while from a lot of reps. It's absolutely ridiculous. Honestly, like the big thing that could hurt the Russian government in terms of like sanctions, like they've done the banking stuff, which is having a huge impact right now. The ruble is now worth less than Dogecoin, which is wild. Never thought I would say that sentence out loud, but ruble's worth less than Dogecoin. And the other thing that would probably hurt the Russian economy a lot, but I don't know if the world has the guts to do it, is sanctioning oil. We talked about, I thought that they were moving towards sanctioning oil last week, but they didn't end up actually doing it. They did a bunch of banking stuff, which may be enough. But with Russia providing 7% of U.S. oil and I think 10% of the world's oil, do we have the guts to cut off that supply and really hurt their economy in that way? I don't know. But that probably would make a heck of a difference. If you wanted to get people to give a good reason, the billionaires who kind of run that country too, if you want to give them a good reason to make sure that Putin's no longer their guy, that's a way to do it. They want to do business with the rest of the world. They want to be able to operate their banking system. Who knows? Who knows how this is going to end up? We'll just American diplomats, the Ukrainians, the Europeans, the people in NATO, everyone is going to be watching this situation very closely, especially with a man like Putin who is desperate to hold on to power and willing to do brutal things. We saw what he did to the Syrians with firebombing their cities. Ukraine might be up next in that. Talking about escalating the nuclear threat. That's a big step. And so our political leaders, unfortunately, the fate of the world is in their hands. Hope you feel great about that. But there are everyday people doing heroic things to try to make a difference. And I hope the people of Russia keep that in mind. I hope the people of Ukraine keep that in mind. And hope we keep that in mind too. How do we make the world a better place? Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. I'll be back later this week. Talk to you then.